It'd be 1996 or slightly before. There was a few ad hoc things before that, but that was when the program really started.
The already part began in 2002, but the official law that allowed us to collect web archives was put into effect in 2009, which means that the real industrialized web archiving began in 2009.
One of our earliest captures was from 1996, but I honestly am not sure if that is the earliest year, and I'm also not sure if that's when the initiative to capture web content began, but there's definitely captures from like late 90s.
Our first content that we archived was the Cyber Cemetery. When we started that, that was 1997. So we are, we don't say it too loudly, but we are one of the earliest. But I think with doing web archiving in what we would consider kind of a modern, archivally and preservation-focused process is really in 2004, when we started to use Heritrix and ARC files and then transitioned into WARC files. So before it was very, we got it how we got it. Sometimes it was delivered to us on hard drives. Sometimes it was captured with the previous versions of tools, which resulted in file system-based collections. But I think I always like to think about 2004 when we started to use Heritrix and the tools that IIPC had developed for doing a truly kind of preservation-worthy kind of collecting.
So we first did a proof of concept in 2004, 2005, because the new library law was being written and our director wanted to include the digital legal deposit in it. So we needed to know what it actually takes to do a web archive. Out of that came a good report, and unfortunately, we couldn't, as an organization, managed to get the funds and the people to actually implement it. So in the end, it only got implemented in 2016 when we did our first harvests. And because we had the possibility of recruiting someone, which was in effect my colleague Ben, who started in 2017, and now we have an ongoing operation.
It was just a new emerging technology. We were one of the first organizations in Australia to have internet access, and so it was just seen as sort of quite important that people were publishing things on the internet, on the web, and like we capture everything else and add it to our collections, the web material was something we should be doing that for as well.
Our organization provides digital research infrastructures. So we provide several kind of services to the research and academic community, like open access repositories, audiovisual studios so that the researchers can come and record their videos in a professional way. So the initial idea was, well, first of all, nobody else was doing web archiving. So at the time, the Ministry of Science, the Minister of Science, which is unfortunately dead now, he saw a presentation from Bruce. So when he came home to Portugal, he asked who could do this in our country. So my name came up, so we tried to do that. And basically the idea was we're going to do this for Portugal because nobody else is doing it here. And we want to create a new research infrastructure to be a new service provided to the community and to the public in general.
Well, the first specialty of INA is French radio and television archives, but when web appeared, we saw that it could be a source of information to make the documentation of radio and television. So at the beginning, it was a kind of complementary description of what we archive for broadcasts. And today, we have seen that the practices have been really known a real evolution, and internet has become an independent object, and we think that it's very related to what we see on broadcast, but it's also an independent object that we have to archive as independent object. So at the beginning it was dependent, and now it's because it's interesting by itself.
I imagine they were trying to document the university history, and they've continued to do that, and I would think they were just aware of web content and the internet as being, you know, a major mode of communication, and they wanted to document that.
Around 2009, the library realizes that a lot of online publications there was a considerable amount of online publications that was a part of what we can consider cultural heritage. So they decided we should preserve that for the long term.
Primarily, the cyber cemetery came out of the fact that we had a long-standing history as a federal depository library, as part of the depository library program of the government printing, now government publishing office. And it was the right time, right place, right set of connections that Kathy had. Government printing office was hosting websites, and they started to see these hosting contracts start to not be paid because agencies or commissions or committees would be defunded after they did their work. And so they contacted Kathy, who was very involved in electronic government information at that point, and still is, but said, you know, do you have any ideas on what we should do with these? Are you interested in these? And so she said, yes, that it's an important thing for the citizens of the United States to have access to the websites that our government is producing to communicate with us. And once it's there, we need to be able to rely on that for both you know, our democracy as a whole, but then also as we look at doing research with that in the future and understanding a time and place. The 90s were, you know, our government went online, and that's an important way. How they communicated with the citizens was a really important piece. And so it kind of started from there, and then has gone into a wider range of activities, from documenting our university publications and unt.edu, working with collaborators from across the country on our end of term web crawls that we do with them. And then now we're doing a lot more subject-based collection.
I think it's the same idea as most national libraries have. It's that the printed collections are the production of the knowledge of the society. And already in the mid-90s, it started to be very much digital. There was a lot of things which were only produced in digital, which didn't exist on paper. And with the democratization of the web and now the new forms of engagement, it's really clear that the knowledge of the society is not in paper at all anymore. Mostly, so it's also very much digital and lives on the internet. And the internet is not necessarily only the web. I mean, there are apps, there are other protocols, there's live streaming and so on. So it goes even further. And as a library, we want to keep on being relevant in the future. And one of the ways to be relevant is to collect that content, index it, make it available for researchers, and preserve it for the future.
So the web archiving program is currently split into the curation team and the IT team. The IT team is currently just me. That may change in future. So I guess I'll start with me. I'm the web archive technical lead, and generally it's just me, but then for specific projects, I can sometimes get the support of a project team of general software development resources, project managers and business analysts and programmers within the IT division for specific development projects. Then within the curation team, we have the web archiving team is currently co-located with the government publications team. So they come under a common director, Paul Coburn, who's quite well known in the IIPC community. And then there is a manager of just the web archiving team under Paul. And then I think it's currently 2 web archivists. In the past, there's been 3. I think that might be a position they're trying to fill. What I just described is that's the staffing within our institution, within the National Library. But our web archiving program is a partnership program with our state libraries and some other cultural institutions, such as the War Memorial and other similar institutions. And so there is staffing at some of these partner institutions that curatorial staffing. Most of them are part-time as sort of part of a larger librarian or archivist role, although a couple of them do actually have dedicated web archiving librarians as well.
So we have 4 full-time dedicated staff. We have, we do a little bit of everything. So I lead the project, do the management and dissemination training. Then we have a crawl engineer. We have a developer that also does research, for instance, for the image search, which is a problem that is not at all solved, how to make image search for web archives. Then we have a DevOps engineer. So this is our core. But it's not enough to have a web archiving service running. So to be honest, we have the collaboration of at least 60 people in our organization. And as there are all different kinds of expertise, we help each other and save a lot of time. For instance, the communications office helps us. The guys from the IT, the infrastructures, they help us a lot with the servers, because otherwise we'll be just overloaded by replacing disks. The security team, they warned us, beware with this kind of problem that you may have, and we fix that before the hackers explore it. So it's a very collaborative work. And at this point we have a running project, in the scope of the roadmap for research infrastructures. And we have 4 more people, which is a digital curator, a community manager, a researcher, and we're going to have a web developer. So we've got stronger with this project. Its name is Rocio. It's a Portuguese word for a place. It's a plaza.
We have 8 people in the team. 2 of them, 4 of them are in the already team. So they really developed other tools, and especially the crawler tools, the crawler engine. We have 2 people specialized in operation to be sure that everything is all right, and 2 people specialized in curation. So 8 people.
5 or 6 curators, or you can call them content owners, who are actively crawling and selecting sites to be crawled. But we have what we call a web archivist group. And I think that group, or at least those who are on the email list, comprises of maybe like 18 to 20 people. And then there's Nicholas, the web archive service manager, and he doesn't focus on that service full time. It's kind of like part of his responsibilities. And as I mentioned, there's a couple people on the development team who step in on technical work cycles when they're needed. And if they can get scheduled and prioritized, that's always an issue. So, and then there's myself, who kind of works with all of those who are capturing content and needing help understanding how to do the descriptions of that resource type.
So you're kind of a liaison for those different
It tends to be project-based, like if someone is trying to create an online exhibit that involves these web archive seeds, and I'll kind of get assigned this project to work on with that curator.
Wow, it's a short team. So we have 2 full-time curators, web curators. We have some part-time curators in some other libraries in Spain, in some departments of the library. And we have also part-time IT people in charge of infrastructure, maintenance of NetArchive suite or the tools we use. So, like 3 or 4 part-time IT people.
There's 2 of us that are primarily focused on web archiving, but unfortunately it's moved into marginal time for both of us. And so I'm only able to spend, never enough time on web archiving, and Lauren spends more, but still she's got a larger portfolio with the library. She manages our software development team, and she has other full-time folks that report up to through her. So we're marginally staffed there. We are starting to see more interest in web archiving from our collection, our special collections, and our other collecting areas within the library. So we're starting to see more interest, which is great. So slowly we're getting more marginal pieces of time getting added, but it would be great to have more resources.
The people working in our web archiving program are sitting here on the couch. So that's both of us. And well, my role is more the technical part, and Ben's role is the curatorial part, so putting together the collections.
For web archiving specifically, that's mostly Nicholas Taylor, the web archive service manager, and then a couple of the infrastructure developers will help with any kind of systems enhancements, or if there happens to be a bug that's identified or something. We do have some support for that.
We actually have a really great relationship with our library IT, which is not always common. They work really hard to provide us the kinds of solutions that we need. Sometimes it's challenging to explain the particular, the specifics of how some of our software works, but especially when you're in a university environment trying to capture large portions of the federal domain, you're gonna get calls from agencies every once in a while, and having people know about what you're doing at the IT level is absolutely needed, because they can say it's something we know about and help us. And our IT actually does a really great job of letting all of the other kind of website owners in the university structure know that, like, hey, we're getting ready to do these annual crawls, and they help us communicate. And we're big users of our IT. They help provision storage for us for our repository infrastructure, provide servers. And so it's just constantly making sure that they know what we're doing, and we're also willing to let them try some things. So we've moved to virtualization of all of our crawlers. For the longest time, we had to have servers, bare servers, and they said, we really want to do these virtualized, and it's worked out really well. And so trying to understand both sides of things has been really important.
I'm from the IT department. I'm the technical support for the web archive, but of course, I mean, we have the rest of the IT team, if it's for servers, for small projects for programming, or for integration work. For example, our colleague who's responsible for digital preservation is not here, but she, of course, takes care that everything gets ingested and preserved and so on.
We have a dedicated web archiving team, a curation team within one of the collection areas, and then we also have a dedicated IT support role for web archiving specifically, and then some of the technical infrastructure like servers and other applications and software and storage and networks are kind of, there's a shared service within the library for all of our different types of collections. The web archive curation team are the primary people who do the web archiving. Occasionally we will get suggestions for things to archive from other parts of the library. For example, the music team might suggest something, or the oral history team might suggest a particular website that's of interest to them. Even our publications, sorry, not publications, even our exhibitions team will say, hey, after we've done this exhibition, can we archive our own website on a particular topic? But at the moment, that's that's sort of like, they send an email saying, hey, can you please capture this? They wouldn't actually do any of the actual process themselves. And occasionally with the web archiving team, we'll get support from the cataloging team for particularly complex cataloging issues, but primarily cataloging for websites happens within the web archiving team.
We're not a library. I believe that is one of our main advantages, because we're not stuck to the old models. Like, this is a management fact that if you have something new, you cannot be competing all the time with the old paradigm. So one of our advantages is that we don't have books, we don't have a library. So if we don't do good web archiving, we don't do anything, because we are digital. Like, if we shut down our web archive, there's no books. So basically, our organization provides digital research infrastructures, so we are completely fit in. We provide open access publications in digital format, not on paper. We also manage the paid subscriptions, but online to scientific publications. Audiovisual is not on tapes, is on digital media from the start, from the cameras. So everything is digital in our organization, so this is how we fit, naturally. Like, we don't have to convince anything about the value of web archiving, because the alternative just does not make sense.
At the beginning, web archive was considered as a kind of documentation, secondary documentation for television and radio, and it was related in this kind of secondary source to understand how radio and television work. And today it has a more dynamic relationship to radio and television, since internet has become a place where people come to watch videos even if they are not interested in television itself or in radio itself. So we have a more dynamic kind of link, which says that if you are interested in the topic, maybe you will find today more things on internet than on the television and the radio. But it's always the idea of complementarity between all these kind of objects, and in a kind of sense, whatever they come from television or from internet, all videos are objects that illustrate the reality of this society of today. And it's the way we want to give it to researchers as an access, so that they can search topics on all kind of sources and all kind of objects, wherever they come from.
It's pretty complementary to kind of discipline-specific collection development. A lot of the curators involved with web archiving are already collecting subject matter in other forms, and so I think collecting websites is kind of complementary to that practice, but has a whole unique set of challenges.
It's a general assumption that is part of the duties of our libraries, especially national libraries today. In the everyday work, it's difficult for departments and for librarians to work specifically in selection and managing of these collections, these web collections. They are attached to their traditional tasks, and it's difficult to make them work on this every day, including this in everyday work. The web archiving is in a digital unit and is in the direction of digital processes and services, so it's aligned with digital library and online catalog and other digital services at the library. But then we have some curators in specific departments like fine arts or cartography or music, rare and old books, and they have delegates, special curators with the responsibility of nominating seeds of their areas to be preserved in the web archive.
The web archiving piece, I think, fits into, so we're a research library in a I forget our current designation because Carnegie just changed it, but what would be considered like an R1 institution. So where most of the library is really focused on more just-in-time acquisition of content instead of building we don't have a 100-year history of collecting everything like many of our peers do. We're a relatively recent R1 library. But there are areas where we should be collecting just in case. And I think the web is a specific one. If you don't collect it now, you can't go back in time and buy it. That being said, if you do collect things now and your acquisition process changes in the future, you can go back into your web archives and make collection decisions. Boy, I really wish we would have collected the PDFs from this website 5 years ago. If we captured that website, we can go acquire those PDFs now into our collections. So I think that there's a lot of proactive collection development that we can do with web archives. There's types of content that we would never get access to that we can get with web archives versus traditional means. We have a large LGBT collection in our special collections that is very much focused on the history of the LGBT community in Dallas. With web archiving, we can actually get the anti-LGBT community, which you'd never be able to acquire the physical collections of those and co-locate those with the physical collections. But in the web archiving sphere, you can get both sides of a topic, of a collection, and things that you wouldn't probably not be able to really get in-depth collections before. So I think it's one of the many tools we have in libraries to acquire content. I think that there are challenges in understanding how it can be provisioned for all situations. And I think some of them are really great use cases and it's really easy to explain. And then others, it's harder. It's not as precise. You can't say I've got $50 or $5,000 and I want to buy so many books. I've got, a 3 terabyte budget and I don't have any idea how much that would be content-wise. So it's a tool that we don't understand all of the attributes of in the process, but it's really important for the future of libraries and for our researchers and our students and our faculty who are interested in using these collections.
So we consider it as an enhancement. So it's adding to the heritage collections. What we are also going to develop is not only suggestions from the users from outside, but also to have our colleagues, our people from within the library contributing to the development of collections. Because there as well we have specialists in every field, and especially at the Luxembourgensia, the heritage department. Those are the people who know Luxembourgish world and culture best. So we need to develop that internal collaboration as well.
If I may add something, I mean, that's why it was very important for the library to have this sort of duo. A collaboration between the IT department and the heritage department, and not create something completely apart where people sit in an office together and nobody knows what they're doing. It's really, we try to embed it into the main library services because it's really one of the future developments of the library, what the core business will be.